For most of my life, quiet felt like safety. Quiet meant I wasn't causing trouble, not asking for too much, not adding weight to a family already tilted toward my older sister. I learned early that shrinking myself kept the peace. My mother praised simplicity. Don't overcomplicate things, Lena, with the same soft certainty other mothers used to tuck their children into bed. So I believed her. I believed that the easiest daughter was the one who didn't take up space. But quiet has a strange way of turning into invisibility. And invisibility turns dangerous when the people around you learn to build their lives on top of your silence. It happened on a cold winter evening, during my grandfather's annual holiday dinner. The table was full, roast chicken, baked pears, crystal glasses, and yet something felt hollow, as if everyone had arrived rehearsed. My sister, Miranda, glowing in another one of her effortless victories. My father, avoiding conversation by focusing on carving meat. My mother, smoothing her napkin like she was ironing tension straight into the fabric. Then Grandpa set down his fork. No raised voice. No dramatic gesture. Just a small, deliberate click of metal against porcelain. He opened his old silver laptop, turned to me, and asked with unsettling calm. Lena, did you receive the email about your trust distributions this year? The world didn't end in an explosion, it recoiled in silence. Chairs stilled. Forks froze midair. My mother's breath caught like she'd been doused in ice water. Miranda's eyes darted to her plate, as if refusing to be part of what she already knew was coming. A trust fund? For me? I laughed inside my head because the idea was absurd. I grew up stretching dollars until they snapped, patching thrift store jackets, walking miles because car repairs were not in the budget. I asked for help with tuition and was met with tight smiles and the same heavy line, "Money's tight this year." And now Grandpa was telling me I had a trust fund? I felt the room tilt. Slowly, Grandpa rotated the laptop toward me. His expression didn't change, but something in the air did. My mother's hand twitched like she wanted to snatch the computer away before it reached me. My father inhaled sharply. Miranda shifted in her chair, avoiding my gaze. Emails filled the screen. Rows and rows of messages, annual statements, updates, reminders, all addressed to a beneficiary whose contact information was not mine. Not even close. My pulse thundered as something old and deeply buried cracked open inside me. The girl who learned to stay small suddenly felt too cramped within herself. Grandpa spoke again, his voice soft but razor sharp. These are yours, Lena. They always have been. And in that moment, I realized the truth I had never allowed myself to consider. Someone had worked very hard to make sure I never knew. But what shattered me wasn't the money, it was whose name was on the email address receiving everything meant for me, and why. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments what's your name and where you're listening from, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more amazing content. I stared at the inbox so long I forgot to breathe. 10 years of statements. 10 years of notices. 10 years of updates meant for me. My name was on the account, but the contact email belonged to someone else entirely. A familiar one. One I had seen on utility bills, online orders, and bank notifications my mother always insisted on handling herself. My hands trembled as I clicked the settings tab. The original contact address, mine, had been replaced a decade ago. Replaced manually. Not by a bank glitch. Not by an automated update. By someone in our home. I saw the timestamp of the change. The year I turned 16. The year I asked my parents if there was anything saved to help with the cost of college. The year my mother looked at me with practiced disappointment and said, "We're doing everything we can, sweetheart. But money is tight." But it wasn't tight. Not for the account sitting untouched under my name. And not for Miranda, who conveniently received every opportunity one couldn't afford. I felt the heat of anger rise, not loud, not explosive, but something deeper and steadier, like a slow-building fire. "Why is your email on my account?" I asked quietly. My mother didn't blink. "Banks make mistakes all the time, Lena. You're overthinking it. Grandpa leaned forward. No. They don't make this mistake. My mother shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. My father kept slicing his meat even though no one was eating. Miranda sipped her water but didn't swallow. Every reaction in the room pointed toward guilt, just in different forms. I opened the oldest email, dated 10 years back. A confirmation message. Someone had verified the new contact address manually. Someone had typed in my mother's variation of her email. The air went heavy. Lena, Grandpa said quietly, someone intentionally kept this from you. It wasn't just a financial betrayal. It was the theft of years, of choices I could have made, hardships I shouldn't have faced, futures I wasn't allowed to build. My chest tightened as I remembered nights working double shifts, skipping meals, crying in privacy because adulthood felt impossible. All while money in my name sat untouched. I don't understand, I whispered. Why? No one answered. And that silence told me more truth than any explanation ever could. But the real shock wasn't the email change, it was the moment Grandpa revealed who requested it, and the evidence he had kept hidden until now. Grandpa stood first. Slowly, but with a kind of authority that made the entire table rise even before he said a word. All of us, he said, gesturing toward his study. Now. The migration from the dining room to his study felt like walking into a courtroom none of us had prepared for. The heavy shelves, the framed certificates, the stiff leather chairs, nothing in that room allowed space for excuses. He placed the laptop on his desk and opened the email history again. Sit, he instructed. I stood behind a chair instead, gripping it so tightly my fingers turned white. My mother and father sat side by side, stiff, nervous, calculating. Miranda lingered near the doorway like she wanted distance without looking guilty. Grandpa clicked into the update log. A single entry glowed in the list. Contact information updated. Verified. IP address, home network. My mother's breath caught. This doesn't prove anything, she snapped. Systems update themselves all the time. No, Grandpa replied flatly. They don't. Not when it comes to legally protected financial contacts. Someone authorized this manually. He turned to my father. Did you? My father swallowed. No. My gaze slid to my mother. She kept her voice steady, but her hands betrayed her, they trembled. I was managing the household paperwork. I must have clicked the wrong thing. For 10 consecutive years? Grandpa asked. Her jaw tightened. Don't talk to me like you knowingly withheld your daughter's financial information, he cut in. The room froze. I wanted to disappear and explode all at once. Mom, I said carefully, why did I never know about this? Why did I struggle while? Don't drag Miranda into this, she snapped. I'm not dragging her into anything, I said. I'm asking why someone decided I didn't deserve to know what was mine. Miranda's voice cracked. I didn't know it was yours. I thought. Miranda, my mother barked. Be quiet. Grandpa clicked another email, last year's distribution notice. A year I had skipped meals to pay rent while Miranda went to a summer arts program in another city. My mother's voice sharpened. Lena wouldn't have handled it responsibly. She's sensitive. She panics easily. I was protecting her from relying on something she didn't earn. The words cut deeper than anything else. Protecting me. By taking everything that belonged to me. My laugh came out hollow. But Miranda could rely on money from my fund? Miranda wilted. My mother's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Grandpa spoke softly, but the weight of his voice filled the room. Elaine, you didn't protect her. You controlled her. And finally, my mother had no defense left. But what she admitted next changed everything I thought I knew about why she kept my future locked away. Silence filled the study, thick, suffocating, until my mother finally let out a shaky breath. You don't understand, she whispered. Then help us understand, Grandpa said. She twisted the napkin in her hands like she was wringing water from cloth. Her voice was tight, cracking around the edges. Lena always needed more guidance. She was emotional, fragile, easily overwhelmed. If she had known about the trust at 16, she would have made impulsive choices. I stared at her, not angry, but stunned. I thought, she continued, that if she struggled a little, if she learned to live without depending on money, she'd be forced to grow stronger. My heart clenched. Struggle wasn't a lesson. It was a sentence. For a decade? I asked quietly. You watched me crumble under stress you created? You don't get it, she snapped. If you had known, you would have left. You would have gone off on your own, moved away, made decisions I couldn't protect you from. Ah. There it was. Not fear for my safety. Fear of losing control. My father rubbed his forehead, as if guilt had finally seeped through whatever shield he'd been holding up. Elaine, we should have told her. My mother's head jerked toward him, betrayal flashing in her eyes. Not you too. Enough, Grandpa said. You don't hide a child's financial rights because you're afraid she'll become independent. Her voice trembled. Everything I did was for this family. No, I replied softly. It was for control. She flinched at the word. Grandpa opened one more email, this one containing the distribution summary from the year I nearly dropped out of school because I couldn't afford textbooks. You let her suffer, Grandpa said, his voice shaking with restrained anger. You let her think she was failing. Tears finally broke down my mother's face. I couldn't lose her, she whispered. If she realized she didn't need us. The truth sat heavy in the air, undeniable and cruel. You didn't want me to grow, I said. You wanted me to stay small enough to keep. My mother folded into herself. My father had no excuses left. Miranda looked at me with watery eyes, guilt, sympathy, fear. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my life back. But before I could reclaim anything, Grandpa revealed one last piece of evidence, proof that the deception ran deeper than any of us realized. Grandpa clicked deeper into the digital archive, past the emails and notices, until he reached a folder labeled Verification Records. He opened it with the slow precision of someone unveiling a truth too long buried. Inside were screenshots of the contact update process from years ago. A step-by-step record. Not accidental. Deliberate. My mother stiffened. Dad, what is that? Something I saved, Grandpa replied, when I first suspected the notifications weren't reaching Lena. My stomach flipped. You suspected years ago? He nodded. But every time I asked, he looked at my mother, had an excuse. A missing confirmation. An outdated address. A technical glitch. But the timing never felt right. He clicked one screenshot. New email verified successfully. The timestamp matched the night I'd cried over not being able to afford a required course fee. My mother's voice wavered. Dad, you spied on me? No, Grandpa said firmly. I protected my granddaughter when something didn't add up. Miranda covered her mouth, eyes glistening. My father leaned forward, staring at the screen as if seeing evidence of a crime he'd unknowingly been complicit in. I didn't know, he whispered. Elaine, you told me the bank couldn't fix it. My mother finally let the napkin drop, her hands trembling. I thought it was best. For whom? I asked. She couldn't answer. Grandpa continued clicking, revealing a final verification tied directly to our home IP address. 10 years ago. The decisive moment someone locked me out of my own financial future. This, Grandpa said, tapping the screen, is not an accident. It's a pattern. My mother buried her face in her hands. My father sat motionless, guilt carving deep lines across his face. Miranda whispered, Lena. I'm so sorry. I truly didn't know. The truth was clear now. blinding in its clarity, impossible to dilute. I had been kept small on purpose. Limited. Restricted. Held back not by circumstance, but by people I trusted. I felt a surge of something I'd never let myself feel in that house before, certainty. "This ends tonight," I said. My voice was steady. My hands no longer shook. I was done being the quiet one. But taking back my life wasn't just emotional, it required a decision that forced everyone in that room to face consequences they weren't ready for. Grandpa closed the verification folder and turned the laptop so it faced only me. "Lena," he said gently, "you have every right to take control of your accounts immediately. If you want, we can call the representative tonight." I nodded before my mother could even open her mouth. She shot up from her seat, panic replacing her earlier defiance. "You can't just do this without talking to us. We can settle this privately." "No," I said. "Privately is exactly how this happened for 10 years. Her knees shook as she steadied herself on the desk. "You don't understand what will happen if you take control." I cut her off. "Mom, you didn't build this. You restricted it. You borrowed from my future without asking." She recoiled as if the words struck her physically. My father cleared his throat. "Elaine, maybe it's time we stop fighting this." My mother turned to him, stunned betrayal flooding her face. "Richard, after everything?" He looked exhausted. "We were wrong." Those 3 words fractured the last piece of her justification. She sank slowly back into the chair, tears slipping down her cheeks. I didn't want to lose you," she whispered. "You lost me," I said softly, "the moment you chose control over trust." Grandpa rested a hand on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you." And for the first time in years, I felt like someone truly saw me. Not the quiet girl. Not the easy one. Just me. He dialed the bank representative. The call felt surreal, like stepping into a parallel version of my life where I had choices, power, and responsibility I'd never been allowed to claim. "Please confirm the new contact address," the representative said over the speaker. "My own," I answered. "My real one." When she read it back and asked if I authorized the change, I said the words I'd been denied a decade earlier. "Yes. I authorize it." My mother flinched. Miranda wiped away tears. My father stared at the floor in quiet shame. When the call ended, I felt something shift, an invisible door opening to a future I hadn't realized I was locked out of. It was freeing. And terrifying. But it was mine. Yet even after securing my future, there was still one final moment I needed, one that would close this chapter forever and open another I never expected. The house had emptied out slowly, like a storm receding. My parents left first, my father stiff and silent, my mother refusing to look at me as she walked out the door. Miranda lingered, guilt etched across her face. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I should have paid more attention." "It wasn't your responsibility," I replied. But in her expression, I saw something I'd never noticed before, a sliver of fear that her pedestal had been built with resources meant for both of us. She squeezed my arm before leaving. "You deserved better." When the door finally clicked shut, the house fell into a deep, echoing calm. I stayed in the study, staring at the screen now filled with years of locked-away opportunities. 10 years of what-ifs. 10 years stolen because someone was afraid of what my independence would look like. Grandpa watched me, leaning back in his chair with tired but gentle eyes. "You handled yourself with more strength than you know," he said. I exhaled shakily. "I don't feel strong." "You don't have to feel it," he replied. "You just have to keep walking." I nodded, scrolling through the files now properly linked to my email. A decade of missed chances. A decade of choices I never got to make. And yet, for the first time, I felt possibility blooming where fear used to sit. Grandpa rose from his chair and walked to the doorway. "I'll give you some time alone." But before he stepped out, he turned back. "Lena, whatever they tried to limit, it didn't work. You became yourself anyway. The words hit deeper than any accusation or revelation tonight. When I was finally alone, I let myself feel everything: grief for the years lost, relief for the truth revealed, pride for the version of me who survived without knowing she should never have had to. I stood slowly, breathing in the stillness of the room that had just hosted the most important confrontation of my life. It was over. But something new was beginning. And when I finally walked out of that house, I had no idea the world waiting for me outside felt entirely different, because I was no longer the girl who stayed quiet. When I stepped out of Grandpa's house, the night air hit me like a clean slate, cold, steady, honest. I wrapped my coat around myself and walked down the front steps feeling lighter, not because the weight had vanished, but because it finally had a name. For the first time in my life, my future belonged to me. Not to fear. Not to someone else's control. Not to the version of me my family preferred, quiet, easy, self-denying. Me. I walked slowly toward the car, letting the crunch of gravel under my boots ground me in the present moment. The streetlights cast long shadows, and for once, I didn't feel small under them. I felt real. Solid. Like I'd grown an inch just by choosing myself. I unlocked the car and sat inside, but I didn't start the engine. Instead, I rested my forehead on the steering wheel, letting the truth settle in. The account was mine again. The decisions were mine. The future, mine. Independence is a strange thing. It doesn't roar. It whispers. It whispered now. You made it out. You made it yours. You're finally free to choose who you become. My phone buzzed, a message from Grandpa. Proud of you. Call me tomorrow. I smiled. A real, bone-deep smile I hadn't felt in years. As I drove away from the house, I didn't look back. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood that some chapters don't need revisiting. They just need to be closed. The trust fund didn't define me. The struggle didn't break me. The truth didn't destroy me, it rebuilt me. And now, with the road stretching ahead, I felt something I hadn't in a very long time. Hope. Not the fragile kind held together by wishful thinking, but the steady kind earned through fire. When I got home, I opened my laptop and watched the first set of restored emails arrive in my inbox, addressed correctly for the first time since I was a teenager. Beneficiary, Lena Hale. Seeing my name there, my real name, attached to my real future, felt like reclaiming a life I didn't know I'd lost. And as the screen glowed in front of me, I whispered to no one. This is my beginning. If this story touched something in you, share your thoughts below, and stay tuned for the next chapter.